afternoon, everyone. I'm presenting this afternoon the topic, Discipling Adherence to Folk Religions. Discipling Adherence to Folk Religions. The outline for my presentation goes something like this. I think I need some help with the PowerPoint presentation. But while he works on it, let me share the outline. First of all, I'm going to be talking about formal and folk religions, the difference. And then we'll look at the spread and the significance of animism. And then we'll look at the appeal and the attraction of animism, and then elements of animistic worldviews, and then go on to the strategy for discipling folk religionists, and then a theological response. After that, we'll go on to look at the contextualized discipleship program and recommendations. What exactly are folk religions? Folk religions are considered to be a fusion between animism and formal religions. And the result is folk religions. Formal religions are the ones that you and I are familiar with. Some are called the higher religions, such as Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. These formal religions have characteristics. What are some of these characteristics? First of all, they answer cosmic questions, or what some will call the higher questions. How did we get here? Where did we come from? What's the meaning of life? What happens after death? So formal religions address issues like that. Also, formal religions generally have written texts or scriptures. So they have written materials that they use for indoctrination. They also have specialists or leadership roles. And also they have central institutions or congregations. In addition, they have a formalized moral code. They also have creeds that are systematized beliefs, and then they are philosophical in nature. So, whether you're talking about Islam, you're talking about Hinduism, Buddhism, or any of the other large isms, these are the characteristics that they generally have. Folk religions, on the other hand, are different. They answer everyday issues. How will my child get killed? Where would food come from? Should I go about this business? Should I give my child in marriage to that person? Is this the right time to plant? Is this the right time to do this? Folk religion deals with everyday issues. It has no written text. It has informal leadership, few formal institutions, and it is pragmatic in nature. So notice the contrast between formal religions and folk religions. Now, what is significant about folk religions is its nature and its spread. The Pew Report, cited a few minutes ago by my friend Dr. Haran Matrete, indicates that only 6% of the world's population practices folk religion. That is questionable. Apparently, what the Pew research has done is to consider indigenous religions as folk religions. However, if you go to a work written by Stephen Neal, a mission historian, way back in 1970, he said about 40% of the world's population adheres to folk religion. Rick Love, who's studied Islam and Muslims, indicates that 70 to 75% of the Muslim world practices folk religions. Gillian Van Reenen says that 88% of the world's unreached people groups practice folk religion. So definitely more than 40% of the world's population is involved in some way or the other in the practice of folk religion. Some of the examples that Harold cited indicate that even when we have members in our churches who claim to be Adventists, they actually subscribe to folk religions. And that is the reason why in certain periods of the year, people go home to, in quotes, visit their parents. But we know that there's one ceremony back home, one ritual, or one festivity that they need to attend because they are part of that community. These are evidences of the nature, the significance of folk religions around the world. Now, since folk religions are a blend of animism and formal religions, what exactly is animism? Animism is the belief that spirits control the affairs of humans, and therefore you need to know how they control and affect your life. Gillian Van Reenen has some interesting quotes I'd like to share with you. He says, as long as Satan maintains his grip on the world Animism as a belief system will not die, but will simply change with changing times. Animism is morphing. The dangers of animism will neither wane nor die as long as Satan exists, he continues. Rather, they shall continue to morph and evolve in divergent forms from one context to another, from sophisticated forms in the West to cruder versions in tribal societies. So what are examples of folk religions and animism in various contexts? In America, you have New Age, you have Wicca, you have Satanism. These are various expressions of animism. And folks who subscribe to the belief, Dr. Bobaka alluded to a study done by the General Conference, indicating that a significant portion of our members believe that the dead are not really dead, that you can communicate with them, that they are in a realm where they can be reached. As long as you believe that death is not the end, you are subscribing to folk religious beliefs. Another quotation I'd like to share with you is, generally, animism is not dying, but rather reshaping itself into new contemporary forms. Yeah. So from America to the Amazon, you have the practice of Santeria to Satanism. That is how animism and folk religions are morphing today. The ability to morph and to merge with other religions, thereby producing folk religions, is what makes this global religious phenomenon worthy of study. It's interesting to note that the emergence or the evidence of split-level Christianity, dual allegiance, and all the issues that we've been talking about that are present in our churches today, missiologists can trace them, mission experts can trace them to the work that early missionaries did. The error early missionaries did was that they ignored folk religions. And they felt that these people, the natives, the locals, were tabula rasa. They had no knowledge of anything. And so when they talked about spirits, about witches and stuff like that, they ignored them and did not respond to them missiologically. As a result, these were just swept under the carpet and have started emerging as dual allegiance and all that stuff today. The interesting thing is, this was the mistake made over 100 years ago, and it appears as if we're making the same mistake today. By ignoring folk religions, by ignoring animism, we're making the same mistake in thinking it will fade, it will disappear. It is neither waning nor fading. It is morphing and merging, and it is a threat to true discipleship. Now, what's the appeal and the attraction that animism or folk religions have today? Well, you know, of course, like we said, that the basis of folk religions is animism, because animism and former religions produces this mix called folk religions. The allure that it has is it answers questions and addresses needs that former religion usually does not attend to. What are some of these problems addressed? The meaning of life and the problem of death. When a person dies, it's a crisis. What do? There's a kind of feeling that that spirit of death is around, and therefore rituals have to be conducted. Certain rituals have to be done. You know the stuff about where the head has to be positioned, what has to happen to the widow, and all the stuff, because death is a crisis. It answers the meaning of life and problem of death. It also answers the question of the good life. My brother talked about the African looking for a good life and the threats of calamity. He also answers questions of guidance and the problem of the unknown, and also the issues of morality and the presence of evil. How does he address the issue of guidance and the problem of the unknown? The Sangoma, the diviner, Babalawo. These are the folks you go to in order to know what the unknown will bring. So, what are the questions? Those are the needs he addresses. What are the kind of questions it answers? The search for meaning, especially at the time of death. Why did the person die? Who may be responsible? When misfortune or crisis occur, the question is not what, the question is who is responsible. Don't tell them they died because of this sickness, whether it's HIV, AIDS, or Ebola. They believe that there's some spirit behind it. No wonder some Ebola camps are being destroyed because people don't quite believe that those things are there. How can one know the future? How can one make right decisions for the present and learn from the past? Questions that animism addresses. Animism is based upon the belief that human existence is under the control of myriad spirits. These powerful spirits hold the welfare and the well-being of humans in their hands. As a result, those spirits must be appeased and they must be appealed to. Therefore, life is a constant negotiation, lived in anxiety and fear. Also, because animists recognize their puniness in the midst of a hostile world, replete with various malicious spirits, the primary preoccupation and recourse is to obtain power. Power is the quotient that they're looking for. Indeed, Gillian Van Reenen wrote an article I often cite that the similarity, the parallel between the animist and the secularist is both of them are looking for power. The secularist looks for power in the scientific way, through science, while the animist looks for power through primal science, magic. Now, animism has this worldview themes. A lot of this material has been obtained from the classic Understanding Folk Religions by Paul Hibbert, Daniel Shaw, and Tite Tieno. 8 worldview universals or themes you can find in animism, which are important that we understand. One of them is corporate anthropocentrism. And what does that simply mean? Humans are the center of the folk religious universe. Humans are the center. Everything is about humans. It's about me. How can I control my environment? What can I do to help myself? Humans are the center, not God. Number 2, the spirit world. Folk religions believe that the spirit world is a hostile place surrounded by spirits, by ancestors, witches, curses, magic, and other supernatural beings and forces. So imagine yourself weak and powerless, and yet you're living in an environment that is hostile. And so the question is, what can you do to protect yourself, to defend yourself? I was conducting a focus group discussion while doing my PhD study some years ago. And one of the members there in that group said, you see, what we're doing is terrible. We ask people to leave their sources of protection. They have those things they put around their hands, their wrists, around their waist, around their legs to protect them in a world that they know is hostile. Now you ask them to discard those things, and then he asks, what do you give them in replacement? Holism is that aspect of life that believes that life is interconnected. Everything we do is interconnected. Everything we do affects our well-being in one way or the other. Another worldview theme of folk religions is existentialism. And that is that folk religion is primarily concerned with the here and with the now. In other words, everyday needs and concerns. So it's not about a pie in the sky by and by. It's not about mansions in heaven when I die. It's about how I can meet my basic needs right here, right now. Another worldview theme they present is power and pragmatism. For folk religion, they are more concerned with practical results than with anything else. And so while you and I as Adventists are more concerned with orthodoxy, they are more concerned with, does it work? I was sharing this in one of my classes, and one of the pastors shared a story of his wife who had been pregnant, gotten past her D-Day, and then the mother said, you know what? Mother, by the way, head deaconess in the church, said, take her here, and everything will be well. And he said he resisted. How can I, a pastor, take my wife, a shepherdess, to this place and do this thing? He said, after weeks had gone by, the mother said, I told you, take your wife here. It will be okay. He resisted for a while. One day he came back. His wife had been taken by mother to the place that very day she gave birth. And so he shouted in class, it works! It works! Orality. Spoken words play a very significant role in folk religions. And we miss it so often. Because sometimes we focus so much on the Adventist faith, for instance, is one that is very literate. You carry your Bible, carry your hymnal, carry all the Trinity as you come to church. So, does that mean that there's no place for the person who is oral? They believe more in what is said than what is read. It has more power to them. Another important belief is transformation and transportation. That people are believed to possess the power to transform themselves into humans, to animals rather. You can call it whatever scientific name, lycanthropy or whatever, but folk religionists believe that people can transform themselves into various animals, and they can transport themselves to long distances in order to cause harm or to do evil. Another worldview thing is fear and security. Fear is a dominant reality, and the need for security is very strong among folk religious believers. These are issues that must be addressed if you and I want to disciple them, make them to be followers of Christ, and come to obey fully all that Christ has said. Don't forget, the call by Christ is not to make members, but to make disciples, and it's a call to obedience. But even as we talk about these worldview things, bear in mind, another important theme that affects folk religions is the issue of mystical causation. What is mystical causation? Well, let me illustrate it this way. One Nigerian scholar wrote talking about a professor of physics. Follow me closely now. A professor of physics who goes to solicit the assistance of a shaman so that he can obtain a job promotion. Professor of physics. What does he deal with? He deals with natural laws, isn't it?
Yes.
But yet he believes that the Muganga, the Nanga, or the Babalawo, or the Marabu has the answer to getting a job promotion. He illustrates it again this way. A professor of obstetrics and gynecology, OBGYN, who takes his wife to a prayer house or to his illiterate grandmother to seek help of a herbalist or a sangoma so that his wife can conceive, even when he's aware that she has lost both fallopian tubes. He still believes. He still believes. While doing my field research among a group of people who are entrenched in these beliefs, the common talk around was Baba is the answer. Baba is a short form of the long expression Babalawo, the father of mysteries, who you call the Sangoma. They believe that he holds the answer to all the questions of life. So whenever you go to have a problem, they tell you, Baba is the answer. Jesus is the answer. But they are whispering to each other, Baba is the answer. Still on the subject of causation, there's often a spirit. It's believed that there's often a spirit that is responsible for everything, including illness. And I want you to realize, although this is not a presentation on Pentecostalism, but I always like to draw, written on that, studied that, I want to draw the allusions with how Pentecostalism is simply African folk Christianity, because it is Christianity infused with African traditional religious beliefs. And they believe that even when a person is sick, it are spirits that are responsible. So today in Pentecostalism, you hear about the spirit of diabetes, the spirit of malaria, the spirit of arthritis, a spirit for everything. And malaria, I mentioned malaria too. For most Pentecostals, the germ theory, which is the belief that germs are the causative agents of illness, is insufficient to explain the origin of sickness. For them, sickness is exclusively the preserve of spirits. I have a quotation by one of the proprietors of the second largest congregation in Nigeria. And you know what I'm talking about when I talk about that. One of the largest congregations in Nigeria, the Redeemed Christian Church, recently completed a 3 kilometer by 3 kilometer, 3 kilometer by 3 kilometer worship place, which is supposed to contain about 15 million persons. Now the next largest one, the proprietor, the CEO, not the CEO, they call them overseer, general overseer, is Bishop David Oyedepo. In one of his books he says, sickness is a spirit, and every spirit is a work of the devil. It goes on to say, every sickness, every disease is a curse. It is not a product of the weather or any such thing. So, malaria is a curse. It is not caused by mosquito bites. The parasite is not from the mosquito, it is a curse of the Lord. By the way, he has a master's degree, he's an architect, well-traveled. He has congregations around the continents. A man who is educated, who is exposed, and yet he holds strongly to those beliefs. My PhD study revealed that folk religious beliefs actually have nothing to do with how many generations you are of a Christian, your position, your title, your degrees, or your travel experience. It has nothing to do with that. If we have to address the issue of folk religions, if we have to disciple adherents from folk religious backgrounds, then we have to develop contextualized strategies. A theory of this we can borrow from Paul Hiebert. Paul Hiebert talks about first step that we need is having a phenomenological understanding, which entails understanding the cultural issues, the systems, the context, in order to be able to address the issue more effectively. So what are the issues in the society? What are the problems that are going around? Each one of them has to be addressed specifically, contextually, and transformed before we can say we have converts. The next step is ontological evaluation, and that is in the light of biblical scriptures. So we're doing double exegesis in the words of Paul Hiebert. Exegesis of the context, the cultural context, and then exegesis of the text of scripture, and see how the text of scripture answers, responds comprehensively to the fears, to the issues, to the needs of the local context. Then comes a missiological administration, addressing the issues where they are, addressing the issues that come up using scripture and helping them see how scripture applies. And then the last step, and I'm happy Dr. Haran referred to that, worldview transformation. That is the thrust of my PhD dissertation. Worldview transformation. There are elements that we need to involve, that we need to integrate in order to bring transformation in those contexts. Hiebert, Shaw, and Taylor come up in that classic book with what should be the basis of a theological response to this comprehensive understanding of folk religious beliefs. These are some of the themes that they mention, theological responses. But my thrust, my position is, it is one thing for us to understand what the theological responses should be. It's another thing for us to develop them, to flesh them, so that they become practical, useful, and contextual. And it also is a responsibility of our church to be able to do that. First of all, first response should be a theology of the invisible. We need to have a theology that recognizes the existence of another world, another realm. You see, before the Enlightenment, everyone believed in three realms. There's the natural world where humans and animals lived, and then you had another world where you had the spirits and other beings, and then you had the other realm where God lives. But after the Reformation, this realm, the middle realm, seemed to have been lost. This is what Paul Hiebert refers to as a flaw of the excluded middle. We need to recognize that existence. We need to stop telling our members that these things do not exist, but rather to say, how do we deal with them? Because it will be a lie for us to deny the existence of the enemy, the devil, or that the demons do exist, or that the devil is powerful. So we need to have a theology that deals with this realm of the invisible and shows God's supremacy over this realm. Another theological response we need to develop is the theology of the kingdom of God. Yeah. That there are two kingdoms in conflict. And for us as Adventists, this should be easy to be able to explain. The doctrine of the great controversy helps us explain two kingdoms in conflict, an ongoing battle involving good and evil, right and wrong, God and Satan, and how God always triumphs in this kingdom battle. Also a holistic theology, a theology that affects every realm of our lives. I think Gary will remember recently at one of the mission issues committee meeting in spring, a presenter told us, I think it was even the last one, a presenter told us how there was a conflict in this church where there's a large Adventist population, and they determined they were going to kill one man. He was a troublemaker. The church agreed they were going to kill him, but because it was the Sabbath, they agreed that after the Sabbath, they will now go out and kill him. And you know what? If you and I want to be true to ourselves, there are many other congregations right here in this country, and in SID, and in WAD, that will do those kind of things. And as I look at your faces, stories are coming to my mind from different places. Did you hear about the Adventist church that said, we've heard too many complaints about witches in the church, and so we're going to get a witch hunter, a witch finder, to determine all who are the witches in this church. And so they chose the Sabbath. It was a Sabbath day, a high Sabbath, and they brought the man to the church to point out all who were the witches troubling the church on the Sabbath day. We need to have a theology that is holistic, that doesn't separate the secular from the sacred, that doesn't separate one life from the other. And how many pastors have you heard that will say, if I take off this jacket, I will show you where I come from? All he simply tells you that Christianity was only added on top of the beliefs and never quite penetrated. We need to also a theology of power and the cross to show folks that at the cross, Jesus triumphed over all the principalities and all the powers. A theology that is powerful. We also need a theology of discernment. How many of us have had members come to us and say, Pastor, I had a dream. Could you tell me my dream? And the question you probably ask yourself is, why does it come to me? But you preach Daniel and Revelation. You talk about the dreams of Daniel, isn't it? So tell me my dream. Interpret my dream for me. And we run away from them because we don't have a theology that addresses the issues of discernment. I often turn them to Isaiah chapter 8, verse 20. God says, He's not opposed to people finding out. He says, rather than go to those who mutter and stutter, should not a people come to me? Should you go to the dead rather than the living? But then he goes further. He doesn't stop there. He goes on to say, to the law and to the testimonies. If they speak not according to this word, it's because there is no lie. So God has given us the basis to be able to develop a theology of discernment. We also need to develop a theology of suffering and discipleship. Where's my brother now? God bless you. A theology of suffering and discipleship. And the Pentecostals have run away with it. As long as your God is a powerful God, why should you suffer? We sing the song back in my country. Me, I no go suffer. I no go beg for bread. Because the God of miracles is my Father. But we need to teach them about suffering. Christ, the captain of our salvation, it behoved the captain of our salvation that he should suffer in order for us to be saved. And all through Scripture, we see elements of how suffering helps in producing disciples. So a theology of suffering and discipleship is very important. A theology of community and the caring church. The church of the New Testament was one that was able to break down racial lines, break down ethnic lines, break down all colors and every differences. Should I continue today? The failure of our discipleship here in this country and across the world, where one group will rise up against another, is only showing that we have work to do. And this is because all we have is folk religion. People who are adherents. Contextual theology is important. Stephen Bevan says doing contextual theology, doing theology contextually is not an option. It's a theological imperative. The task of communicating the gospel in culturally meaningful and relevant ways ultimately belongs to the national church, to its national leadership, and to all the members of the church. The GC will not produce these materials for us. They don't understand the issues. They don't understand the issues of widow cleansing. They don't understand the issues of all those tribal practices. You and I must be the one. I have this quotation I share in most of my mission classes. Listen to this. When working with people who are functioning with a magical worldview, those who are practitioners of a folk religion, the Christian missionary may have much to learn from the diviners, the Sangoma, Babalawo, before he or she begins to suggest changes to their practices. Hence, also, Kelvin tells us, the more a Christian priest takes on the role of the diviner, the more effective and meaningful he becomes in the life of the Africans. Internship from the Sangoma. Folk religions are pragmatic. What works is what counts. For them, supernatural power is neutral. It doesn't fall into neat categories of good and evil. People have no qualms how they get help. Once they help, when the problem can be resolved. A pastor I interviewed said his senior pastor, where he served as an Indian, told him, you don't have a child, go to this place, I'll refer you. You get the child from there. And he said, these are his words. We get the child from the devil and we dedicate the child to God. It doesn't matter how the child comes. And so folk religious believers practice what they call fire insurance, where they offer sacrifices to all the idols, just in case one doesn't work. All bases are covered. And Dr. Bubakar alluded to it. Why do Christians go to them? They said because prayer is Panadol. It is dull. But Baba is sharp. Panasharp. I actually have a quotation from Western Nigeria that says, we believe in prayer, but it could take 20 years. Let me move forward to talk about discipleship. It's a call to obedience. Somebody said obedience is the only sound objective of a Christian spirituality. Obedience. Obedience to all things I have commanded you, Jesus said. The Lausanne Covenant movement has this quotation, we lament the scandal of our shallowness and the lack of discipleship. And it goes on to say, to fail in discipleship and disciple making is to fail at the most basic level of our mission. We need to evaluate ourselves. Have we succeeded or are we failing? Contextual methods of discipleship would entail pedagogical methods that are more receptor-oriented. Methods that are more natural to the receptors should be employed, says one missiologist. In other words, don't force the method from the West. Don't say we must do, what's the other one we used to do? Small group. What's the action units? We must do action. Is that contextual? And how long does it last? Notice the number of multi-dimensional teaching methods Jesus used. A scholar quotes from Luke chapter 14. What are some of them? He used one real-life situation, high context communication, concrete examples, stories and parables, questioning methods, spiritual principles, debriefing and reinforcement. Different methods. Even in his healing, Jesus used different methods depending on the context and the person. Pedagogy for discipleship should affect both the cognitive, the affective, and the volitional. And so we must learn how to incorporate symbols and rituals and drama in order for us to be effective. What are the conclusions of my paper? As we try to disciple adherents to folk religious practices, we need a religion of power. Power over evil forces and evil persons. In one of our books, I was studying my PhD program, so we need to be careful about sterile Christianity. A Christianity that has no power, it's just sterile. Number two, a religion that is relevant to the here and now. It's not enough to condemn folks for going to the Pentecostal churches. Everybody wants a good life. The African wants the shalom now, the deposit, the guarantee of what is to come. We need a religion that is also supernatural, because as systematic theology tried to make itself more accepted as a discipline that is worthy of study, they began to demystify and remove all the supernatural from Christianity. We need to realize Christianity is a supernatural religion from Genesis to Revelation, from beginning to end. We need a faith that responds to needs and fears, contextually and biblically. Many fears that our people have, many needs that they have, and also methods that are contextually developed. What are the recommendations I have? Number one, diligent, comprehensive, ongoing studies of the forms, of the nature, of the significance of folk religions. Folk religions metamorphoses. It never changes, it always adapts to the context, to the time, to the place. And therefore we need, Gary, a study center. It could be in Asia, it could be in Africa, but we do need a study center that studies this issue and its changing forms and status. Number two, holistic contextualization of the gospel. Holistic contextualization. We've looked at contextualization as something that involves only the text, but it also needs to involve the institutions, the myths, the ethics, the rituals, the doctrines, because no one size fits all. Number 3, development of contextualized discipleship resources, such as the material we put in your hand, dealing with the demonic, that respond to local issues, needs, and fears. Finally, that we need to have Adventist theological responses to folk religious beliefs, using doctrines like the Great Controversy and other fundamental beliefs that we have. How can we adapt this to address the various needs from place to place, because they're never the same? May God help us to the same. Amen.